This weekend, I managed to get away from the office to go to Ingleton Falls in the UK. And looking at these beautiful waterfalls, it made me think of the project management theory, Waterfall. So in this video, I'm going to describe what the Waterfall project management theory is, and I'll tell you about some successful projects that used Waterfall in the past. In fact, let's start with that now. So we have the Hoover Dam, NASA's Apollo program where they put men on the moon. We have the Panama Canal construction, the Eurofighter Typhoon development, so that's the fighter jet that we use over in Europe and the UK. It does have to be said though, at least for the Eurofighter Typhoon project, it was over budget and delayed. The NASA Apollo program did reach its goal of putting men on the moon before the end of the decade in 1969 at least, but it was an incredibly expensive program of work. However, for the Hoover Dam, although it was the most expensive engineering project in US history at the time of its construction, the project was completed 2 years ahead of schedule and cost less than the original budget of $49 million US. Right, let's have a look at what the Waterfall project management theory is. It's a sequential and linear approach to managing projects. It was first introduced in the 1950s, and it had roaring success and became a widely adopted methodology for software development and development in other industries such as engineering. So some key things about it. Firstly, it has sequential phases. The typical phases might include requirement gathering, system design, implementation or coding or building, then testing, deployment and maintenance. With it being linear or sequential, there's no backtracking. Each phase must be completed before the next one begins. This also means that once a phase is finished, it cannot be revisited, which can be a limitation if the requirements do need to change. There is quite an emphasis on documentation. This will include detailed requirement specifications, design documents, and comprehensive test plans. It has clear milestones to do with the phases. These clear milestones make it easy to track the project progress, as each phase has a specific set of deliverables and criteria for completion, and you know where you are in the overall plan of the project because it is set out with clear milestones and phases. Due to its lack of flexibility to change requirements, and with it being very sequential and linear, it has limited client involvement. Clients are usually involved at the requirement gathering phase, and once that's over, they won't really be involved until the user acceptance testing phase nearer the end. Now, this runs the risk of late feedback because the client won't see what's being produced until right up until the user acceptance testing phase. And if anything needs to be changed at that point, or they find out that the requirements should have been different or haven't been captured correctly, or things have changed in the environment, which means that the original requirements aren't really necessary anymore, well, that can result in either costly changes or you've run the risk of doing a lot of work that ultimately wasn't needed. For this reason, it's not suitable for complex or evolving projects. It lacks the flexibility to accommodate changes once the project has begun. As I said at the start of this video, it has historical significance in the fact that it was the dominant project management methodology until agile methodologies came along like Scrum and Kanban. And as you know from my channel, I'm a big advocate for Scrum due to its ability to adapt to change, work off empirical evidence, iterative development, reduced documentation, and focus on delivering valuable products to the customers and users. Waterfall still works really well for projects where the requirements are really well defined at the start and are not expected to change in a very stable environment. For projects that are in the complicated environment, not the complex environment, that meaning that the processes and technologies are well understood, have been used before successfully in similar projects, and everybody understands what needs to be done. They've got experience on it, so there's very little likelihood of unforeseen issues and complications coming up. Think about a house development company where they go and they create the same houses in different locations all the time. They know exactly what the materials are. Everybody's built this house before. They know how long it's going to take. They just need to build the same thing in a different location. Now, that can be complicated, but it doesn't mean it's complex. They're less likely to have unforeseen problems occurring that they have never seen before or have to use new technologies that they've never used before. Waterfall can be really good for really heavily regulated industries as well, such as healthcare or the space industry, due to the amount of documentation that is produced through the waterfall methodology. That can really help with proving that you've met regulation requirements, or for any other reason that the client might have asked for lots of documentation to go along with the project. Waterfall is also good for estimating budgets at the start of the project because everything is meticulously planned out from the start with different phases. You know what you're going to build, how are you going to build it, and by when. So this really helps for budgeting. And of course, clients want to know how much things are going to cost. So Waterfall is a really good way of working out exactly what things are going to cost. The caveat to that is how many projects end up running over budget and over time due to unforeseen problems. Take the Eurofighter Typhoon example. It was over budget and had lots of problems, but it's also something that needed to be highly regulated. It was funded by the taxpayer from the European nations, and with it being a military machine and an aviation machine, it has to meet safety standards and lots of performance standards as well. So there will have had to have been an awful lot of documentation that would go along with that project. It was certainly a complex project where they were pushing the boundaries of what was possible using new technologies, new materials, and all of that. And those are the pros and cons of the waterfall method. Now, if you're interested in learning about Agile and Scrum, I've got links to my Udemy courses in the description of this video. If you found this useful, give the video a like and hit subscribe. I've got more videos coming out. I'm Michael James from Learn Management Online.